everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm Magical Jill, and
hey,
today...
she lives. She's alive.
Yes,
she's here.
Yes, I'm alive.
Welcome
finally.
back.
Thank you.
We had a little mutiny while you were gone. I took over.
I heard that there was a mutiny. I heard that there was a strike. People didn't want me here anymore.
Yeah, that's true. There was a big mass petition to not bring you back, but out of my good graces, I said, well, I guess I'll do it. I guess I'll bring her back. She's the best host we've ever seen. I'll do it. I'll bring her back.
Thanks, I appreciate it. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about Pokemon, and as you guys may have noticed, I haven't talked about Pokemon in like a year on my channel. Crazy, right?
Well, you've been through like 3 jobs since then. A lot of frustrating circumstances in the workforce and
yes, well.
a lot of real life stuff, and we run other channels as well. Link in the description to those. But Pokemon is something we do want to cover on this channel. It's just, we're not a primarily Pokemon channel.
I would like to do it more often than every year, though.
Yeah, I would certainly like to cover it more often.
Yeah.
And it was something we actually thought about moving to my other channel, and then you said, nope, I want it here. So
no, it's mine.
That's where we're doing it.
Bye.
Because Palworld is being sued by Pokemon. That's what we're talking about today.
Yeah, and you can explain that lawsuit. That's your time to shine.
It's a frustrating situation. So with this lawsuit, I will say that some of it is guesswork. More information will come out over time, and it's a very odd situation. We don't fully know what Palworld is being sued for, other than some type of patent infringement. Mm-hmm. It does seem like the Pokemon Company and Nintendo has been kind of trying to pinch Palworld on this for a while. Before, there were kind of semi-accusations of these characters look too much like ours. There were accusations of other things, and it never led anywhere. The guess is that this is over a patent regarding the ability to throw balls at monsters in the field. Now, Jill, can you read what the guess is on this?
The technical language for it is this patent covers aiming and throwing an item to capture a character in the field, and then aiming and throwing an item to send that creature into battle.
So we're going to kind of take a look at that today, but my question of the day for you is, do you think that you should be able to patent a game mechanic like this? That's a genuine question I have.
My answer is no.
I really don't think so. To me, this is a little similar to WB patenting the Nemesis system type technology that they made for Shadow of War. I just think this kind of stuff stifles innovation. There was a patent for years that made it so that you couldn't have mini games on loading screens.
That's ridiculous.
And what it essentially did was just make video games worse.
Really?
So my issue with this, first off, right off the bat, is I don't think patents like this should exist. This patent was granted in December of 2023.
I thought it was 2021.
No, 2023 is when it was actually granted. So here's the thing. What's weird is a patent was filed in 2021 regarding the character throwing an item to catch a monster while in the field. Mm-hmm. But then there was a patent based on this that was actually granted in December of 2023, this application, because it takes quite a while, 1 month before the launch of Palworld.
That's pretty sus.
Which kind of makes that look, now I'm not going to accuse them of this, but it kind of makes it look like Nintendo pushed to get this accepted fully before the launch of a potential competitor. And that's where this becomes kind of malicious, is that I was reading kind of about this as well, and I am not a Japanese lawyer, nor am I an American lawyer, and granted, this has not been accepted in America. It may be, but America is a little more harsh with letting you copyright video game mechanics.
Yeah, whereas it seems like they're able to get away with it in Japan somehow.
Yes, and, video game analysts, like, for example, there was one I was reading that was talking about Nintendo's application of their different patents and how they enforce them. This person was Serkan Toto, which I probably pronounced his name wrong, I'm sorry. He was talking to Games Radar and talking about how essentially Nintendo has used patents in the past to kind of hit competitors.
But only when it's convenient. Because they have a million weird patents that are things like, there was a couple of examples here. Like, they have a patent on when you have an isometric view and then a character is covered by a tree. For example, the character can still be seen as a shadow. They have a patent on shadows if your character is behind a tree.
But that's in, like Toto says, that's in pretty much every single isometric game.
Yeah.
So they didn't actually enforce that because it would destroy a lot of video game companies.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. And also, I think that most people, like most reasonable people, would probably argue you shouldn't be able to file a patent for that anyway. Why it is granted in Japan, I have no idea.
It's ridiculous.
But it is, and I'm sure I'm just a stupid American for questioning that. Now, that said, what's weird is that they do have such a massive amount of patents that this industry analysts said they could have basically sued half of the gaming industry back in 2017.
Yeah, this person said that they have thousands and thousands of patents on other things. You know, like other things that are stupid like that.
Well, what I find really interesting about this, and I want to point out the hypocrisy. So first off, let me just say, Pokemon has very obviously been inspired, is the nicest possible word, by a lot of outside things. Mm-hmm. You know how to pronounce it better than me. In America, we call it a gotcha mechanic. But essentially those, what are they called, gashapon balls?
Gashapon, I think, is what it said online. That was invented in 1960. And it's very obvious, to me anyway, you know, these are balls, you pull them apart, and they have something inside.
A hidden prize.
Pokemon, you have balls, you pull them apart, they split down the middle, there's a creature inside.
Yeah.
Are we seeing the connection here? And also, Gashapon was extremely popular in Japan. Where was Pokemon made? In Japan. Obviously, there's an inspiration here.
Right, so to me, it's weird. It would kind of be like a baseball game. There probably is some dumb thing like this. I know that they have a lot of licenses on being able to use a specific league for baseball or football or any sport. Mm-hmm. That's already weird enough, but it's dealing with real people's names and real trademarks, like team names, human being names, so it makes sense. Mm-hmm. Imagine if I made a baseball game and I patented hitting a ball with a wooden bat. And so the entire genre was just owned by me.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that stifle innovation?
It would, because there's plenty of other games where you could do that with that aren't baseball.
So what's weird to me, though, is that Pokemon is allowed to do this, right? And the Nintendo company, which is huge in Japan, and the Pokemon company, which is huge, they're allowed to file these sweeping patents. For some reason, they're granted to them, probably because of the business that they bring to Japan.
Probably.
And then they are allowed to enforce them as they see fit, or just ignore them, which is weird because Nintendo's supposed justification for aggressively defending their trademarks in the past from even things like fan-based video games was the idea that if
and fan-made merch.
Yes, was the idea that if they didn't defend it, that they could lose it. Like the idea that someone could argue in court they didn't care about defending their trademark. Mm-hmm. So when they're enforcing their patents so selectively, it comes off like they don't actually care. Mm-hmm. They only care when they see the opposition as a potential threat.
Yeah, because Palworld sold extremely well, and they were upset about the competition. Because in recent years, I talked to this girl at my job about this too. She said, that she hasn't heard anything about Pokemon in years, but she heard of Palworld, and this is somebody who's outside of the gaming industry, who's not like a huge fan of a bunch of all things games, And so that kind of goes to show, Pokemon hasn't been doing super amazing, like, media-striking things lately, but obviously Palworld has, and it's just kind of interesting to me that as soon as a competitor got slightly more popular than them for 1 year, all of a sudden, well, let's pull out a random patent.
Yeah, it comes off malicious. And that's what I wanted to talk about is first off, it's just a very bad look to enforce these things so selectively when it is a threat, which there was another game recently I completely understand that Nintendo took legal action against. It was Pocket Monster Reissue, and they were pretty much just using direct Pokemon, designs, characters, all this stuff.
Like it was 1-to-1.
From Pokemon.
Yeah. They even had Ash.
And they were making money.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes sense, right? They made another video game, I believe for mobile, that was just using their stuff.
Yeah.
That makes complete sense.
Which is wrong.
And there was no transformation there. It wasn't like fan art, where even though people argue, oh, that's still trademark infringement or whatever, you can't argue there was some kind of transformation here, really. Mm-hmm. It was just using their stuff.
Yeah, and I'd argue with Palworld, that's a completely different game.
Yes.
Just because it has similar concepts doesn't mean it's the same exact thing. And, also, speaking of that, I feel like Pokemon shouldn't be the one, like, saying anything about this, because they got their whole idea and all of their original character designs from Dragon Quest II.
Oh, allegedly. Allegedly. I don't know if it was 2. I know it was Dragon Quest. This series inspired a lot. You know, like, so if you look at things like Nidoran, Caterpie, you're looking at Pinsir, you're looking at a lot of these Gyarados, a lot of these characters, there is almost one-to-one examples of where you can see that inspiration came from Dragon Quest, very likely.
Sometimes even down to the color palette, too.
Yeah, that's where it becomes really sus. I'm going to show some of these pictures. There was a YouTuber who talked about this as well that I think we could probably link his video, because Jilly, you had that.
Yes, let me mention him. He explains this extremely well. This video was from 2 years ago, by the way. Great guy. His name is Gym Leader Ed, and he talked about how Pokemon copies other games too. And he has a bunch of examples in his video about how Pokemon copied other games in the past before, but nobody got mad at them for that. But as soon as somebody copies something from them, uh-oh.
Well, yeah, and that's what's weird to me about it too, is that it seems like for some reason there's this idea that because Pokemon is popular, it gets to own the monster genre.
Which is not fair at all.
No, it doesn't make sense, to the point where everything that is also a monster genre game is referred to as like a Pokemon clone.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I kind of find that very odd. You know, you have those designs taken, you have just straight up, there were examples when they were developing Pokemon where they said even the trading mechanic was actually inspired by Dragon Quest. It was inspired by rare drops in Dragon Quest and wishing that they could trade them between players of Dragon Quest.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, well, you're just straight up admitting, hey, we got our ideas from Dragon Quest.
Yeah.
And then you look at some of the characters, and there's at least a dozen where it's very sus.
Very sus looking. Yeah, very.
And there are years putting that apart where it's like, very obviously those character designs were around for a long time. So what comes off weird to me is when you have those examples, and then you have Pokemon Sun and Moon. I think you wanted to mention something with that, because remember what happened with Yokai Watch.
Oh, yes. So around the time Sun and Moon came out, there was also this game called Yokai Watch, and Gym Leader Ed explains this, I think, in his video, too. And basically, like, Yokai Watch was very popular at the time, so a lot of the UI elements and a lot of the, like, graphic-looking things, you guys know what I mean.
Well, even some of the mechanics.
They took a lot of that, and then they put it in Sun and Moon.
Yeah, no, I think we need to be careful, unfortunately, legally, when we say this.
Well, they made something extremely similar looking.
Yes. And
that's what I mean.
This is where I actually wanted to jump in really quick from the future and show you an example of this too, because Gym Leader Ed covered this on his channel. Highly recommend you check out this video. I will link it in the description because it's only like 8 minutes and it gets into some very interesting specific examples. I don't want to show much of his video because that would be stealing his thunder, but I do want to show just a couple seconds of this to give you an example of what we're talking about so that you don't think we're just blowing smoke. Like, there are a lot of interesting correlations when it comes to Pokemon being inspired by other things. And you know what? That's okay. We don't care. As long as they're not beating people over the head with a measuring stick that they don't even use for their own company's actions when it comes to taking inspiration or mechanics from other franchises.
This image here showcases a bunch of features that were added to Pokemon Sun and Moon that were supposedly close to features in Yokai Watch. Yokai Watch has the Ultimate ability, and subsequently Pokemon introduced Z moves in Sun and Moon. What's more suspicious is that it was added in the generation that had just followed Yokai Watch during its very successful time. I wouldn't even call this ripping off. I'd say that they saw something that another game was doing and they put their own spin on it, and that's fine.
Have you seen, Jill, have you seen the difference between the Pokemon art style and then what it became during the era when the Yokai Watch cartoons and anime were popular?
They look like they were drawn by the same exact person.
Yes, they changed animation styles, and it very similarly, for the first time ever, they had never really changed their animation style. They had tweaked it a little bit here and there, changed outfits for characters, swapped out people. They had never really fully changed their animation style, but then Yokai Watch as a brand and anime, everything caught on as a game series, and all of a sudden,
popular.
What does Pokemon the anime look like? Even Ash looks like he was ripped out of the Yokai Watch cartoon.
Yeah.
And slapped into a Pokemon show.
Yeah, like if you put those characters together in the same universe, they would look like they
like they were buddies.
Yeah, they look like they were meant to be there the whole time.
When we talk about these, Jill, are we saying that we think Pokemon should not be able to take inspiration from something else?
No, but we are saying that Pokemon shouldn't become a butthurt little baby when something else gets popular and then pull out their little patent card and say, well, you got this from us.
Yeah, that to me is where this becomes kind of immature.
It's really dumb. It's like your little brother who you don't want to hang out with. Like saying, he copied me!
Yeah. What's weird to me about this is that Pokemon is something that I agree with you and disagree with you on the idea of, like, people outside of gaming have heard of Palworld over Pokemon. I'm sure people have heard of Palworld because it went viral.
Mm-hmm.
I know that people know what Pokemon is, though. I just don't think... I think what you said is true. They didn't do a very good job on their press cycle in recent years because they haven't had to.
Yeah, because it hasn't...
There's no competition.
Yeah,
Why would
was
you need
no competition. And for a while now, I'm a waitress. I see people all the time, like lots of different walks of life. And obviously parts of those walks of life are children. Majority of the children that I have seen do not wear things like Pokemon shirts anymore. They don't even know what Pokemon is. The people who I see who know about Pokemon and are wearing like Pokemon things and are talking about it are adults. So it's kind of fallen out of favor with like younger people.
I think in the West more. Like
in the West, yes.
In America, at least in the Midwest where we live, I think that it's still a titan, but it's like because it was the only game in town, they didn't need to push it with advertisement. Mm-hmm. And when you don't push it with advertisement, you're not capturing that hype train for children as much as they were in the 90s and 2000s. Like in the 90s and 2000s, everybody, like kids at school, if you surveyed at least boys, there was probably out of 5 boys, 3 of them at least sometimes watched Pokemon, on TV. At the very least.
When I was young, everybody was doing it. They had to ban it in my school.
Right,
they had to ban Pokemon cards, like on the bus and in my school and stuff.
Well, your school banned fun, though.
That's true. It was so big. But it's less big now with children in the West, from what I've seen. And then I feel like they got upset as soon as Palworld came out, went viral. Obviously, a bunch of kids started playing it. A bunch of adults started playing it. Mm-hmm. They thought, oh no, they took our audience. Because we didn't bother to advertise for the last 5 years.
Well, right, but one thing with Nintendo, ever since Iwata died, is Nintendo doesn't really accept responsibility for failure. They've unfortunately started kind of putting it off on their audience and other people. When Satoru Iwata was the head of Nintendo, this guy was taking pay cuts to keep employees around. Aww. And was apologizing when he felt that they failed. Now, was he, also a businessman? Yes. Obviously. But ever since he died, I would argue that the quality of a lot of Nintendo products has slowly gone downhill. There's a lot of great stuff still, and I still really like Pokemon. Even Scarlet and Violet, I actually really enjoyed them.
Great game, it just didn't run well.
Yeah, exactly. There was no optimization for that, and I would argue Sword and Shield was pretty bare bones. So, like, when you're looking at the more, Nintendo Switch era of Pokemon, I think it is far less impressive than the stuff from when Iwata was alive. Not that he was the one directly making it, obviously, but you had that oversight at Nintendo of quality more. And I think that since then, there's been more of a push from Nintendo as a company to make money at any cost. And I think that unfortunately, that has not been good for the Pokemon brand. And that is what this comes off as to me, is just like a look behind the curtain at that. Like a look at, you didn't have any interest in enforcing this for 9 months. You were looking and looking and looking. It comes off like you were looking and digging through your stuff to find something to catch your competitor on, and then you finally found like a random note card that said, oh yeah, we own this bullshit.
Yeah.
Let's get him on this.
Isn't that ridiculous?
Yes.
That's very, very dumb. And it's just because it's a competitor. That would be like if Target filed a patent saying, we are the ones who can only sell things on shelves in our store. And
yeah,
so
you
then
have to
they,
sell things hanging from the ceiling with strings or something.
Yeah, and then they sue Walmart for selling things on shelves. It's that kind of stupidity.
Right, it is really a random thing to go after. That is, if that is the patent that it is.
Yeah, but they do have a bunch of other really dumb patents that people have mentioned before, so it could be any one of them.
What sucks is this. Even if it is a 100% legitimate thing, like let's say there was a rogue Nintendo employee who stole the keys to the castle and ran and joined Palworld and gave them behind-the-scenes technology to copy Pokemon, even if it was 100% legitimate, it is a really bad look. It's like it took you 9 months to file this. That's bad. Because that makes it look like you were digging for something to find.
Yeah, or they were gestating it like a baby. It took them 9 months to create this patent out of them.
So what it either looks like to me is they were digging for 9 months to find something. Your baby thing was very creepy and upsetting to me. Or they were waiting for it to make enough money so that when they sue them and win, they will get more money.
Oh.
Either one of those is malicious and not a good way to run a business in good faith.
No, not at all.
Because then you're taking advantage of the law instead of actually following the law. And those are two very different things. Taking advantage of the law is not the same as enforcing the law for justice, right?
Yes.
So what's weird to me about that is either way, it just comes off as a malicious attack on a competitor, and it comes off as an attack on the idea of competition. Because something, Jill, you pointed out a while ago was we would look at old monster games, even things like Digimon that never caught on as much as Pokemon. And you said to me, about Pokemon that it doesn't seem like it ever really had competition after the early 2000s.
No, because things like Bakugan, Digimon, a lot of those ONs, a lot of them just kind of went away.
Or got smaller.
Or got smaller. And like then, I think recently Bakugan finally came back.
And Digimon has always gotten games and anime and stuff, but it's never been on the scale of Pokemon.
Same with even something like Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! Went like all in on like the cards stuff, but they didn't really make like any like games that were what would you call it? Like in that point of view?
Yeah, so you're saying, like the Yu-Gi-Oh! Games exist, but they're certainly not to the same extent. They didn't pursue it the same way that Pokemon did.
So they also didn't have to worry about that as much of a competitor, even though that's like a monster type card game.
Right. Yeah. I don't know what else to say about Jill. It's just, I think it's a really bad look. What sucks is I really like Pokemon. I was hoping that they would be mature about it. I don't know why I had that kind of idea. Stupid of me. But my hope was that they would look at what Palworld was doing and why they were succeeding and how they were succeeding and say maybe we should improve in those areas.
Yeah.
And it seems like instead they've looked at it and said, how can we get even? How can we kneecap them? And what I hope, and something I was reading about, was that Sony has kind of thrown their weight behind Palworld. And Sony is not a big fan of Nintendo.
Oh.
They are not really they've never been on good terms for the most part.
Uh-oh.
And Sony is actually working with the Palworld company to make an anime even.
Well, spill the tea. I'm excited to see who's going to win between Nintendo and Sony.
So that's the question is, will Sony throw their weight behind Palworld to say F you to Nintendo to drag out the litigation?
That's crazy.
And here's the thing, Sony can win that either way. Like, let's say Palworld gets hit huge, Sony buys them up, keeps all the talent, and they have a great studio under their belt they're making stuff with. I'm not trying to advocate for...
Yeah, and then they make that a PlayStation exclusive. There you go.
I'm not trying to advocate for that. I'm just saying that's what happens in the video game world. At least they're not bought by EA. Then they go out of business in 2 weeks.
I mean, that's kind of what happened with Stellar Blade, is they bought up Stellar Blade, said, you're going to be a PlayStation exclusive now, here's more budget.
Yeah, thank you, shift up. Here's a bunch of money, now make your thing.
Yeah.
So that could happen. Or, or Sony floats... It's possible they don't get involved at all, although that would be bad for probably Sony too, because then they're losing a potential money bag right there. But also, Sony has the money to drag out that litigation just as a middle finger. which they've done that kind of thing to Nintendo before.
Which,
like, just kind of dragged it out as a
I don't know,
middle
that
finger.
sounds kind of funny. I'm interested. I can't wait for a follow-up.
And what bothers me is that I genuinely think that these consoles and these companies, they need to work the same way the idea of checks and balances are supposed to work, where they're supposed to keep each other in line. Where one of them gets out of line and the other two are like, hey, what, you know.
Well, if Sony does get involved, at least that's kind of them checking and balancing Nintendo for once.
Right.
In their entire career of doing something good for the gaming industry.
And ever since, pretty much forever, other than the Wii U failure, Nintendo has not felt the need like they have to compete. They've kind of been in their own world, like, we're Nintendo, we have a built-in audience.
We're special.
And we have brand loyalty, we're not like other girls. And Pokemon, I think, has had that too. You know, like, we're better than other monster catching games. Monster Rancher? Pfft, what's that? Digimon? You mean poor man's Pokemon? It's like they look down at everybody except their little brand. And it sucks because I like their brand. I like the actual creators who make it. I think that Game Freak, if they were given some more damn time to make these games, could make something really cool like they did in the Game Boy Advance era and the DS era.
What if Nintendo wins all of this?
That would already be awful. I'm already upset at your what if.
And then next year we get Pokeworld. Instead of Palworld, it's Pokeworld.
We wouldn't even get that. What we would get is we'd just get the same old Pokemon because they wouldn't have to compete with anything.
That's true.
what's stupid is, like, even if they win, they don't want to change. Like,
No.
they don't want to do anything.
They don't even want to design new Pokemon anymore.
No, they just base them off the old ones a lot of times. It's frustrating to me. I don't know. I feel like I'm droning on and this is becoming a me rant video.
That's okay, Ranty.
But I don't understand it because when I was a kid, it kind of reminds me of Rockstar games, GTA. Pokemon was like top tier of RPGs. You know, it was up there with Final Fantasy. It
got too big and it became trash.
Well, yeah.
And it's not trash, but I mean, you know what I mean. Like,
No,
things
I
that
do.
become so big, they just stop caring.
They balloon in popularity, and then they know we have a built-in audience who they view as too stupid to go anywhere else. That's really how they view hardcore fans.
And then they stop trying.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's just a shame, because I look at that, and I look at what they used to do, and you look at how special and interesting the anime was in its, first 8 to 10 seasons. You look at how great the games were up through, I'd say, Gen 4 or 5, and then they started kind of varying in quality.
I thought they were, from what I've seen of all of them, because I haven't played every single one of them, I think they all look pretty darn good up until the Switch.
Yeah, I mean, yes. I'm just saying that there were some falters in there where they still didn't have to compete much, but you could still tell Game Freak was really trying.
Game Freak?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm really upset. Game Trico. It's their Trico mascot.
That's gonna be their new Pokemon for Pokeworld.
Well, Trico is a Pokemon already, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, but this one's the evolved version.
That makes sense. I'm just upset at it because looking at it, I never knew that Pokemon, in my opinion, ripped off a lot of stuff in its past too.
Somebody even said that the idea of Mega Evolutions came from some other thing. I don't remember what thing.
Well, I saw Z moves they were arguing was inspired by other games too.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm fine with them doing that. If they're taking inspiration from other stuff to make their game better, that is the point of competition. But then don't go after someone else for doing what you're doing.
Doing the same exact thing. Yeah, it's so annoying. And anyway, I hope you guys really liked this video. I make a lot of really cool stuff on my shop, cosmobunny.shop. And I would love if you guys went to go check it out and check out my other videos. I'm going to try and make more Pokemon videos soon. I also want to start talking about the Pokemon anime more, a lot of that cool stuff. And I will definitely be having my husband here for us, to help us out with those.
I'll try and rein it in.
I'll do more Dragon Ball, do more Sailor Moon, all that fun stuff. And I hope to see you guys again very soon. Okay, bye!
Bye. Alright, now let's file a patent for being able to watch videos and sue everyone who watched this video.